Hi, everyone. So if you have just hopped on, we have gone live on YouTube. We are also live on Zoom. So if you are here, please say hi to us. We'd love to kind of say hi back and see where you guys are all in the world.
Hello, Jacqueline. Hello.
So if you guys are interested in, you can go in, and if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask during registration, please go ahead and do that in the Q&A. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to get on. Hi, Karen, Deborah. Hi, Jackie. I guess both Jackies. Leanne, hi. So I met Leanne at APC like how many years ago? Like 4 years ago.
Sophie.
I love it.
Awesome. I spoke to Sophie about, I think about 3 weeks ago. We had a lovely OneNote and Outlook integration session. So lovely that you're here. Thanks, Sophie.
Hi, Michelle. Awesome. So I am so excited to be connecting with Meg. And I asked Meg how to say her name because I didn't want to mess it up. So it was Steinschauer. Did I say that right, Meg?
Yeah, 100%.
Hi, Jessica. So if you guys are connected with Meg and you're not connected with me, can you guys put a 1 in the chat box? And then if you're connected with me, but you've never really connected with Meg, put 2. And if you're connected with both of us, then hit 3. Oh, I love it. So many people are going to get to meet Meg for the very first time. That's awesome.
Great.
Yay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll have people join both on YouTube and on Zoom. So if you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to ask questions in that chat. I will do my best to connect us that way. But you guys can't interact with each other, so I will make sure that I'll look over there and hopefully we can get everybody talking. So welcome, everyone. I'm so excited. As I mentioned earlier, I'm here with Meg Steinschauer, and we met on LinkedIn. It wasn't that long ago, like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, a couple months. Yeah, it's been great.
So we haven't known each other very long, but we connected really quickly because we're both very geeky when it comes to Outlook and OneNote and productivity. And so we decided to do this webinar, and we're so excited that all of you guys have joined us. So thank you so much. So I feel like a lot of you have never met Meg before. So I'm really excited that you'll have the opportunity to connect with her. She's amazing. Please go follow her on LinkedIn. But Meg, do you want to share a little bit about who you are and what you do? And yeah, tell us about you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So I'm an executive assistant, and I've been one for a couple of years now. I think it's an amazing profession, and I believe I believe in everything that we do. I believe that wearing so many different hats on a daily basis, just makes us these well-rounded assets to our executives, our wider team, and our organization. So I'm really passionate about our roles. But me personally, I think it's about 6 months ago, I started Connected Assistants for the pure reason of just fostering genuine connections with other assistants. And I found that a lot of assistants were asking about productivity and going paperless. How do I use OneNote? How do I make the jump from manual to paperless? And also then I started getting a couple of questions about how to step up your communication, step up your game. So Connected Assistants was originally started as just trying to connect with other assistants, but now it's really just about connecting with yourself, connecting with your values, connecting about just with yourself, and then from there connecting with your executive, connecting with your team, and then still connecting with other assistants, because we have to fix each other's crowns. We absolutely have to.
I love it. It was really interesting because when you and I connected, it was on LinkedIn, and you were, I think somebody else had mentioned that you were starting this group. And so I shared it out, and I got, I don't know, 4 or 5 messages of people saying, hey, why would you do that? You have your own group, and that doesn't make any sense. And I thought, but at the end of the day, we're trying to further our profession. So if there's anything that I can do to help foster that, then I'm totally down for it. And then I met you. Like, I didn't know you when I shared it out. And then I met you, and I was like, yeah, like the whole EA world needs to know about Meg, because she's so awesome. So yeah, I'm so excited, because I think when you and I started connecting, I started realizing that we are advocating a lot of the same things about productivity and about how you manage your workflow, and utilizing all the different tools. So when everyone joined, we asked everyone to kind of give us a list on the rundown of what platforms that you're on and kind of productivity and all this good stuff. I would say the majority of those that responded were on Microsoft, which makes me happy camper, because y'all know how I feel about it. But I do want to make sure that, we're touching on both. So if you are in the G Suite and you're joining the webinar live, please make sure that you raise your hand, because we want to make sure that we're giving tips and tricks, not just for the Outlook team, but for Team G Suite. Just kidding. No, I'm kidding. So, I really want to talk about, so we have lots of questions that we can get into, and I just want to give a really quick housekeeping for everyone. Meg and I really want this to be really conversational. All of us have our coffee, hopefully, or tea. Actually, I'm drinking tea for Meg today. And so we really want this to be like a coffee chat. We want it to be really interactional. So if you guys have any questions, please make sure that you are typing that in our chats, and we're going to make sure that we answer them. But one of the questions that we get all the time, especially when we were registering, we were talking a lot about our power hour, which you and I both are all about, and how we plan our week. And also we had some questions about how do you keep, manage the information overload that you're getting from everywhere. So if you guys are currently doing a power hour, I'd love to hear if you guys just say yes or me in the chat if you do. But so I'm going to kick it off on Meg and let Meg start it off. So talk to us about what a power hour means to you. What do you do, and how does it help you advance your career as an EA?
Right. So as an EA, we all know we get tasks and all kinds of things from all these different directions. We get it via WhatsApp, we get it via email, we get it via face-to-face. We've got people coming at us from all these different directions, and it's very easy to suddenly start feeling overwhelmed. So I read up about, productivity, and I've just been doing all these different courses and just trying to really just be the absolute best. And I found that really just taking a step back and going, hold on, what actually happened this week? And just breaking it down day by day. So what I've done is I created a questionnaire for myself, basically, and I started doing it every week. And it's about, so what has worked well this week? Thinking about the tasks that were handed to me, thinking about the tasks that I possibly completed, thinking about the interactions that I've had with people. So all of these great things. And then why do I think it was great? Is it because I had a process success? Is it because I had the competency, I had the attitude, I had the skills? What made each one of those interactions or processes a success? And then taking another look at what didn't go so well. So was there a task I was given that perhaps wasn't given to me in a way that I appreciated? Or was I given a project and I didn't actually understand the full scope? Did I have an interaction with a colleague that just left me feeling, oh, I didn't actually appreciate that? You have all of these different things. It's just about reflecting. And then why didn't that work so well? So you can see what it is. I'm taking like a real deep dive, like a real sort of mini audit into my day and my week. And then what I found was, I found that I had tangible evidence as to what I wanted to do going forward. I was like, well, Monday, I didn't enjoy that. So actually, now I'm going to set some boundaries. I'm going to have a conversation with my team. I'm going to have a conversation with my executive. I'm going to say, this didn't work so well because of XYZ reason. I feel that perhaps I need extra training in, I don't know, whatever it is. Microsoft Outlook, for example. I then started getting a report on what it is that I liked and what I didn't like and where I wanted to go. And then I also found that as soon as I started doing this, I could actually take this tangible data into my performance review. And I found that I didn't actually have to scratch my head. I could actually say to my executive, listen, I'm ace at project management, or sitting in a room and listening to 8 people talk, and I'm able to just put all of that into something that everybody can understand. So I then I gained confidence in myself as well. So then I started feeling
Yeah.
motivated. I started feeling inspired. I started feeling all these wonderful, great things that we all have to feel because we spend most of our time at work. So Power Hour started off as doing like sort of a mind map. And
Yeah.
then it's grown into me putting everything into OneNote. And now at the moment I do a survey. So you can use whatever survey, but I just survey myself automatically every week. I get a reminder, listen, have your Power Hour. And I sit back and I reflect and I go, yeah, I think I'm pretty good at this. And no, this needs to change.
No, I love it. And I think that at the end of the day, really the goal of all of that is to get to the point where you're actively strategically planning things out versus letting things happen. And I know for me, that was when I personally made a big shift in my career, is when I made that shift of going, okay, things could happen and they just snowball, or I can really reflect on it and think about, okay, what was that like and why did that happen? And how can I make sure that doesn't happen again? Or how do I get in front of that fire? We all like to say that we're always putting out fires, but I actually don't enjoy doing that.
No.
I prefer not to have them in the first place. And so for me, really determining that I was going to set time aside to think about that and figure out what I wanted to do and then plan it out so that it made sense. So Michelle had asked the question while you were talking, are you doing the Power Hour at the beginning of the week and writing it down? But it's not, yes, right? Or at the end. I do mine on the end.
Yes, I do mine at the end of the week, usually on a Friday afternoon because I work full time. So usually on a Friday afternoon, I take an hour and I just go, right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I then reflect on everything that's happened and I try to plan for the next week.
Yeah, I do mine at the end of the week too. And I also, for me now that I've shifted into where I'm no longer a full-time EA and I'm, working what used to be my side hustle is now my full-time hustle. What I found for me is it's all in a mix. And I try to do that not just for my work life, but for my personal life so that I have really good work-life immersion or integration or whatever term that you want to use. So for me, it's not just work related, it's sort of my whole life related. And I even reflect on how did things go at home? And, was I connecting with my husband as much as I'd like to, or did I see my kids? My kids are older and out of the house. So for me, it's like, did I have the opportunity? How often did I talk to my daughter, or was I doing other things? And for me, that really helps me have a better work-life immersion, which is important to me. So I kind of do both, where I do my work life and my
and it's so powerful, which is why I call it a Power Hour. It's because you're creating an awareness of yourself. And once you have a real deep awareness of yourself, you're able to start recognizing things in other people, which then builds your emotional intelligence. And once you've got that, you're then, you're opening up the line for communication. You're then able to better communicate with other people, to better communicate what it is that you're frustrated with or what you're good at. And and that's the only way that change can really happen, is when we know ourselves, we communicate, and then we can transition into whatever it is that we want to.
I love it. One of the things that you and I have chatted about this too. And I'm curious. So if you guys do this, I'd love to hear, put a yes or a no in the chat if you do this, but is then taking that information that I know that I need to grow in. And I think that as administrative professionals, we have so much on our plate different than other people. And I'm not going to go into it because we all know that's the real deal. And so figuring out then how do I accomplish all those things? For me, I started creating, and if you followed me for a while, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this, but developing a productivity roadmap and saying, okay, for me, when I started off doing these strategy sessions or power hours, I started to see the gaps. And then I said, okay, there's clearly a gap that I need to close. How do I do that? And then from there, I actually built a productivity roadmap throughout the whole year that I build on every year that says, okay, for example, way back in the day, email management was a thing for me. I was just not able to stay up to speed. I was getting like 500 emails a day and I just couldn't keep up. And so for me, I decided, okay, that's clearly a gap. I need to close that. But I knew that building a productivity habit like Inbox Zero was really hard. And so that was not going to be something that I was going to just magically be able to do overnight. So I decided that I was going to build on top of that and give myself 3 months to get it down, and then, give myself another task. So I think that's really important to kind of figure out what that looks like. And you and I have chatted about this, about if we feel that, if we feel that Inbox Zero is attainable. I know my thoughts. Sorry guys, my video went out, but I know my thoughts. So do you guys feel that Inbox Zero is attainable? And he's like 100%.
Yes.
So I know that you and I both feel that it is, but let's chat about how do we actually make that happen? Because we have different processes, I know.
Yeah. So they're quite similar in the sense, you and I think, so I like to keep one folder. I have my inbox, and then I have another folder for just done, call it whatever you want, don't ever look at it again type folder. So your emails come in and you prioritize them, categorize them, however you want to do it. So what I do is I have different categories for different things that I have to do. I categorize them and I create a task, or I put them into OneNote, which is where a lot of my sort of day-to-day management is. And then it goes into a processed folder, a done folder, and I don't necessarily have to look at it again. But then it does also, it comes with practice. It comes with knowing, what my priorities are for the day. It also comes with setting boundaries. So I don't necessarily want to check my email all the time. And I know you and I, you mentioned this as well. So you have set times that you check your emails, but you just really have to just play around and just see what it is that works for you, because we don't want to be like one of those. I mean, I was doing some research and it said here that reading and responding and actioning items in emails can take up to 28% of a professional's life. So a professional's day, not their life, sorry. And if we are not only managing our own inbox, but we're managing our executives as well, you can imagine it's just so much to do. So if we're talking about getting our executives inbox to zero, then it's a case of just communicating with them as well to see what it is that they want. How do they want to work it? Do they want to have 3 folders with read this now, don't worry about those newsletters, or what is it that they want?
Yeah. So Meg and I came up with some questions, some polls that we wanted to ask everybody. So I just launched it. So if you want to take a second and while we're chatting, like answer those, because it'll help us kind of hone in on some of the next topics. But I totally agree. I think for me, when you're thinking about, when people ask me like, hey, will you coach me on productivity? What I always try to tell everyone is that, look, we've all been doing this for a very long time. So the fact that you do things one way and I may do it a different way, I think that's okay. And there's not a one size fits all. And you have to build on how you naturally process information. And kind of going back to the power hour, if you've never thought about how you process information, you can't take those next steps to build a really great process in place. I think for me, when I do it, I'm very intentional with using my inbox strictly as a place where I triage. And then from there, because I'm certainly not saying, for me, I'm a strategist, I'm not an activator. And so for me, I have zero FOMO. If I get something in my inbox, I could care less. Not that I don't care about your email, but it doesn't, it's not an immediate response. I don't feel the pressure to, I have to immediately do that task because it came into my email. But there are people who feel that way. And I can, trying to make them think like me or manage things like me, it's never going to work. So figuring out ways so that they can be productive. And let's just say you're someone who's an activator and you get an email that bothers you, you may feel the issue of like, hey, I've got to go activate on that right now and get it done. And then I can focus on something else. I'm probably never going to convince you otherwise, So don't waste your time trying to be like me, figure out what makes sense for you. But I think there's challenges on both, but you have to know how you work and how you process information before you can ever even try and come up with a process that's going to help you, be able to manage that a little bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the trouble with constantly checking your emails is if you're in the middle of something, say you're typing up meeting notes, or you're trying to spec out a project or whatever it is that you're working on, or planning an event. If you are checking your email as well, you run the risk of not paying full attention to what it is that you're doing, and then possibly missing a small detail. But yeah, it's totally up to you knowing what your process is and what's best for you. So we got a comment on YouTube, and Adam was saying the inbox zero would be amazing. It's really a struggle for me. So I'm gonna let you go first, but can you give everyone who's struggling or specific, it doesn't have to be specific to Outlook, but can you give maybe your top 3 tips about how you keep your inbox at zero, and then I'll go next? Yeah, sure. So keep it as simple as possible. Create some rules and alerts if you can. If you want to have more than one folder, more than one just done or processed folder, create different folders for newsletters, for example. Create rules and alerts so that things automatically filter in that way. I would suggest that you schedule time, which is similar to what you say, schedule time to actually manage your inbox, and create tasks with emails that come in. So if you know that you've got a something that's relating to a project, just right click in Outlook. I'm just talking about Outlook now. Right click and drag it down to tasks and create a task on that, and then link it to whichever way you want. So I think those would be my top 3 tips, to try to keep it as simple as possible and to achieve inbox zero. Yeah. So I would say my top tips is I use my inbox as where I triage. So I look at an email and I decide what the action then is. Is it FYI? Is there something I need to do with it? And then, priority level, and then I make a task. So for me, my folder system, way back in the day, I used to have like a gazillion folders on the side. Now I only have 3, which is action completed, to do, and file. And so if there's something that's like a newsletter or something like that I'm like, hey, I'd love to read that, but I don't have time, I will throw it in there. But then I also put time on my calendar. So I'm a huge fan of time blocking. And so I put a time on my calendar to actually then go complete that action, where I'll look through them and say like, hey, do I really need this? And then I also have a brain dump that I have in OneNote. So I connect the 2 of those. And then I really say, regardless if you're in Outlook or if you're in G Suite, if you are still using the native app on your phone, that to me is a huge miss, because they've built these really great features. For example, if you're in Outlook, that's how you do that. If I get an email and it's 7 o'clock in the morning and I haven't got into the office and I have 150 emails, if I read them all, then I get to the office and I still have 150 emails that I have to then go reread and figure out what I need to do with. So for me, there's some really great features that are in that iOS for Outlook. So I will use that, move it over to my actions, or move it over. And so it's just really easy that you can, use the tools that were created for that specific action. Yes, for sure. Use tools as much as you can. And then I would say that probably my other biggest tip is that, look, nobody's going to have inbox zero all the time at every moment. And so figuring out what does that process look like for you? And so for me, I check my inbox twice a day. I also schedule time to manage it. So I think the idea that I'm switching it over to I'm thinking about how I'm working versus I'm just working to get stuff done is the big shift that you have to make. And, if you get in your inbox, then clean it out. It's okay, but you have to kind of build on top of those top tips. So, okay, so let's talk about, so I want to check the polls really quick that we just launched. So out of there, so I'm going to end the polling, give you guys a really quick second if you have not done this yet.
Okay, so the very first question that Meg and I asked was, do you feel that you have an open and honest communication with your executive business partner? 81% of you said yes, 1 or 3% said no, and 16 asked if we could give you some tips on how to improve. So what are your best tips on having a really open dialogue? Let's just say, for example, let's use email management as one of the things that you want to talk to your executive about. Let's just say that you're taking on his inbox or, you know, their inbox or whatever, and you want to talk about best practices, let's just say. How do you bring conversations up that are kind of, you know, I want training, or I'd like to do this project, or, you know, whatever it may be? What are your best tips?
What I would suggest is starting off right from the very basic, taking a step. I always say this, taking a step back. It sounds like I'm this like real laid back person. But I would say that it is, at the end of the day, this is what I would do. At the end of the day, have a look at what it is that you've done and create a report. Create a report on, this is what I've done today. This is what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. If you're managing their calendar and their diary, this is what your day looks like tomorrow. This is what your week looks like tomorrow, so on and so forth. And then having a chat about, is there anything else that I can do for you to proactively make this week better? So then you're trying to open up the line of communication with your executive. And it might be, you know, that they'll reply to this eventually, maybe they'll reply to it immediately, but it's trying to perhaps have a different way of communicating with them on top of your regular one-to-ones. And if you're not having regular one-to-ones, then perhaps trying to schedule that in, because the more you communicate and the more you'll understand what their priorities are and what it is that makes them tick, and how you can fill the gaps and how you can actually build a better relationship with them in that way, to then eventually say, hey, can I please manage this in your inbox? And can we please try this? But it's all just about communication.
So can you guys comment below? I'd love to see how many of you guys, you know, are having that conversation. How often are you meeting with your executive? Are you meeting like once a week, twice a week, every day? And how long? I was just talking with someone today, and we were chatting about how much time they were spending with their executive. And I think the biggest thing for me is, she said that she always gets moved. And when I asked the question of, okay, but who's moving it? Is your executive moving it, or are you moving it? Because I think those are two very different things. If your executive is constantly moving you, then that's a conversation you need to have with them. But on the same hand, if you are always moving yourself because you are maybe not valuing that time with your executive in the way that you should, that's a different red flag to look at. So I think, you know, when you're thinking about productivity, especially by building that in with your relationship with your business partner, because it's not just productivity for you, it's productivity for them. And what are they doing, and how do you help drive them, and, you know, what's happening in the business? You have to spend time with them. And if you're not spending time with them, you're never going to learn them. You're never going to learn their preferences and any of that. So it's very, to me, that's one of the biggest things that I would say is, for me, I spend at least an hour with my executive. And if they don't have an hour to meet with me, they don't have an hour to meet with anyone. And I know that's a little challenging, but you have to work yourself to that point so that you can have that communication and understand what they need, and, you know, how are you driving the business. Okay, so let's go. So let's go to the Q&A really quickly. So Jackie was saying that it's hard to hear about how wonderful things are in Outlook when Gmail is not as powerful. I hear you, Jackie. I'm so sorry about that. But I will say that for those of you that are, when you're talking about productivity, that when you're in Gmail, I'm just curious, how many of you guys, because in Outlook, there are so many tools in automation. There's some really, I don't know if you guys have got hooked on My Analytics yet, which is an Outlook, which is absolutely amazing when you're thinking about productivity. I'm just curious how many of you guys are still doing a lot of your actions inside Gmail, or if you take them over to other apps. Curious what everybody's
just commented about powerful, especially Boomerang. So I use Gmail for my own personal things, and I do like that Boomerang. That is pretty awesome.
tell everybody a little bit more about it for those that don't know.
Yeah, so it's a feature that it basically just reminds you to follow up.
Yeah.
Basically, it's quite different to Outlook, because I know you can do the same thing in Outlook. Sometimes if you're not quite as religious to check your tasks as some of us are, it's quite easy to miss things, but Boomerang doesn't let you do that.
So for those of you that are in Outlook, I'm very curious, can you guys type a 1 in the chat if you are in Outlook and you have discovered My Analytics yet? Haha, Karen, Cindy, yes. Okay, so for those of you that do not know what this is oh my gosh, I love that so many people are using it. So Analytics is an AI powered tool that is inside. It's only been released for the last year. And it is absolutely amazing. It will track your time and how much time so for example, it will tell me how many hours that I've met with Meg in the last month, or it will kind of go out based on how much time that you're spending with people, all the way to internal one-on-ones or internal meetings and external meetings. It'll tell you how many days that you had quiet. So how many days were you not working on email or calls or whatever. So it is this amazing tool that you can absolutely use to help drive your productivity if you're in Outlook. I think I have a video that's getting ready to get released this week or next on it. So if you guys are interested in My Analytics, check it out. It's amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about building productivity habits. So we talked a little bit about email, but I want to talk about some of the other productivity habits that I think are affect all of us. So do you have, like, what do you think are your top 4 or top 3 productivity habits outside of inbox management? What other things in the power hour? So what other things do you do to help increase your productivity?
Well, we spend a lot of time in meetings. So, I mean, every single role that I've been in, where I've been an assistant, I spend a lot of time in meetings, and a lot of time you can spend just sat there listening or taking meeting notes. And sometimes I've worked with executives where they get quite frustrated because, they're sat in there for an hour and a half, and they just, gosh, the meeting is not getting anywhere. So yeah. Productivity is really just my top tip is taking a look at that week. And I do this in the power hour, taking a look at the next week, and just really looking at all the priorities. Are all of these meetings that we're attending together an absolute priority? Each one of those meetings, have they got clear set agenda? Is there an outcome? Yeah. What is this meeting about? Let's not waste our time sitting in a meeting for nothing, just for giggles. Let's not do that. So really just taking a look at your week, trying to be as productive as possible, using all of those hours that you can. And most of it is spent in meetings. So the other thing for me is to be productive is I try to be paperless. So I'm in those meetings, I've prepped for those meetings, I've got agendas, I've got whatever it is that is required for that meeting, and I do everything in OneNote, and then I distribute meeting notes in that way, or I attach a link inside the calendar invite so that everybody can see the meeting notes, because then I don't have to be spending any extra time distributing meeting notes or tidying up meeting notes. So that's a very efficient way to just be on top of it. I'm battling with the other ones. Those are the top 2 for now. I can't think of another one right now.
I am all about time blocking, and I think that time blocking is so impactful. For me, what I try to do is I look at my week, and I know that there are some that are non-negotiable. So I've done 2 things. I've done batching weeks, which I think is really amazing, and then time blocking, which those 2 are, to me, very critical as an EA. And so kind of what I do from there is I reverse engineer my week based on things that I know that needs to happen. And then from there, I think, because sometimes we look at our calendar and it seems open, and so we're like, wow, I have all this free time. But when you really start reverse engineering your calendar, you realize that you probably only have like 10 hours a week to actually meet with people, because everything else is, and so you tend to be a little bit more protective of your time, or the time of your executive. And I do that for both me and my execs so that we can look through and say, okay, this is what's actually happening. And then, kind of going back for me, we use OneNote to highlight our priorities for the week. And so if I know what his priorities are for the week, I'm able to look at his calendar and say, does your calendar reflect your priorities? And if not, then we need to make a shift. And for us, that has been one way that we've been able to really skyrocket with productivity and make a big difference there, because we know what the goals and objectives of the week are. And then we can say, okay, this doesn't match, so we need to make some changes, and then we get ahead of it. So I love that. Okay, so we're all in let's chat a little bit about, kind of using either Teams or Slack or all the different collaborative tools that we all tend to use. So how do you keep everything, that you're not getting information overload?
Me, I keep things as simple as possible. I keep everything in OneNote. We also, because I'm an assistant at the moment just to one executive, we've got a very good relationship in the sense that we will talk via mobile phone, and we'll also use OneNote. So I share my OneNote, and I can get updates whenever he does anything in there, and he'll get updates whenever I do anything in there. So that's at the moment, that's where we communicate. I have used Teams before. It's absolutely awesome. I think it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And if you guys haven't looked at this, just download it for yourself and just use it for your home. Get your husbands and your wives and everybody on there, because it's so wonderful. You can put everything in there and communicate on there. It's very good. But yeah, so anything that is one place, I would say any one place to just have all of your information is essential to communicate from there, because you can reference and link, and it's quite effective.
Yeah, I would say, if you're thinking about, especially if you're just newly adopting or you're integrating Teams, if you're new to it. So the thing that I would say there is most people don't know how to use it, and training is very limited. In most organizations, they roll something out and the training is very limited. And so if your organization is getting ready to do that, I think, definitely, figure out what the best practices are, because I've seen adoptions go very badly because people don't know how to use it. And then everybody gets this channel and, there's information everywhere. And so if you're not in the habit yet of going completely paperless with your meetings, I would say use the tools in the way that they're created to be. So number one, if you're in Outlook, then make sure that you've created your template. So most people, when you create I don't know if you can do this in Gmail. Somebody let me know that if you're in Gmail, if you can actually do this. But in Outlook, you can create invites that are specific with information inside of it. So most of us open up invite and it's blank. But then we have to go and type all of, the agenda and, what type of a meeting it is and what the expected outcome is and all of that stuff. So that thank you, Lauren. So it sounds like that you can do that as well in Gmail. So one, that would be the first thing that I do. And then secondly, connect your meeting notes in OneNote into a shared collaborative tool, so that everybody can, they're not emailing you, and you're not having all this email traffic about what's happening in the meeting. So you can build the agenda literally in OneNote. And then if you're utilizing Teams, then you can connect it all in one. But I would say that I would not start off on Teams if you haven't practiced some of the other tools yet, because most people don't know how to use it. And then just like Slack, all of these things, people learn that, hey, there's a collaborative tool, and these can be very convoluted and things can get very frustrating pretty quickly, because if you don't know how to use it, and there's so much information out there, and then everybody's slacking you, and then, so you do have to set up some best practices, whatever collaborative tool that you're going to use. It can't just be a free-for-all. But yes, definitely, if your organization is going towards Teams, it is absolutely amazing, and it will remove it out of your inbox management and give you even less to do, which is at least an email, which is absolutely amazing. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about, earlier we had talked about your power hour, and we talked about time boxing, and we talked about all that kind of good stuff. So how do you then take all of that like reflective things that you've done to kind of understand how you work and all of your tasks? And then how have you taken that and then applied it to your role as an EA, and then, you know, tried to advance your career with that?
Oh, it's a great question. So it's created a sense of awareness within myself. So I know what it is that I'm particularly good at and what I'm not so great at. So what I've done is I have this report. So now I'm able to take this into my meeting with my executive and go, right, you know, I really have a passion for HR. I really enjoyed creating this operating procedure. I really enjoyed talking to all these different people. So I think I have a keen interest in taking on perhaps some elements of this. What then comes as a result of that is, right, well, let's try build this into your working day. Let's see how we can progress your career with this. And then I'm able to go on courses and just learn a little bit more about it. So it's the same with analyzing, because I do quite a lot of reporting as well. So what I did was I really enjoyed this reporting. I used Excel. I created all these fancy pivot tables and put it all into charts and graphs and created wonderful stuff, interactive spreadsheets. Oh my gosh, I can geek out about that. Oh wow, I just love spreadsheets. I just love them. So, but as a result of that, now I've gone and done Excel courses, and the company then supports me in that and goes, right, you know what, you're really good at building this report, so can you please build some more reports for us? And then you create an awareness with your executive and your wider team. And once you have that, again, this all comes back to what I was saying earlier. You have an awareness of yourself and what it is that you're good at, and you're able to communicate that, and then communicate with your executive and your wider team. And then you are able to transition to move on to doing something more. So
I think for me, kind of figuring out, completely agree, when you figure out the kind of EA that you are and that you want to be. And, you know, years ago, I may not have wanted a as high powered role as I would now, per se. You know, I think that when your kids are young, and, you know, so there's not a one size fits all. And when you are able to spend that time to figure out what does that look like, you are able to strategically plan out your career at a completely different way than if you realize, when you realize there's gaps, or when you realize there are things that you're really, really good at. The other thing that I think is really important is also figuring out what your non-negotiables are. So for me, over the year, I've learned that these are executives that I am unwilling to partner with. I know that's like, oh my God. But I think, you know, for me, I know how I work, and I know the kind of executive that I like to partner with. And it's also helped me to avoid ones that just are not a good match. And I think when you consider whether or not you're an activator, if you're a strategist, and kind of how you process information and how do you actually work, it will help you figure out, okay, do I partner well with an executive who has high red energy? If you are green, probably not, you know? So kind of figuring out all of that stuff allows you to put your career in a very different focus than if you're just sort of like letting it happen and you're not being as intentional with it as you'd like. Okay, guys, so let's get into, we're gonna take the opportunity now to pause and ask everyone to kind of go in and put in their Q&A. And then we're gonna switch over to all the questions that you guys asked us when you registered. So, okay, so number one is, what is the best approach to learning new technology or brushing up on current tech skills? I've been taking a shot approach up to this point, and it's not optimal. So how do you suggest someone can increase their tech skills or learn a new one?
research what it is that you need, what it is that your executive or your organization needs, and then just read up about it and Google and just try and take as much time as you can to just learn about it, and, you know, try find like-minded assistants who you can actually pick the phone up to and just have a chat about it, because there's nothing as daunting as, I'm just going to use OneNote as an example. Nothing as daunting as wanting to use OneNote and you finally download it, because sometimes it's really difficult to actually get into OneNote, especially if you've got all these different versions or you've got security problems. and then you're in there, and it can be quite daunting. So try find somebody to speak to about it, and just read about it as much as you can, and use trial and error by yourself before you really just go and like push it out to your executive or the team, so that you become a slight expert on it before doing something like that.
So my best advice if you're learning new tech is to have to know what the problem statement is, right? So if someone says to me, hey, teach me tools to be more productive, okay, not helpful. What's the issue? Like, what are you trying to fix? So I think for me, if you understand what the gap is that you're trying to close, and then from there you can, figure out what those next steps need to be, or what is the best app for that, or the best tool or software. But I think you have to be really specific about what you're trying to fix and why. For example, kind of going back to the whole Teams OneNote thing, I would not, if someone says, I want my team to be really productive and know where to go for meeting minutes, but no one on your team has yet even looked on OneNote before collaboratively, I would not suggest them going to Teams yet, because there's an integration there. But if they're not even used to taking step one, you can't expect them to, take 10 steps. So figuring out what the problem statement is, and then taking those small, because change management is a thing, especially when it comes to technology adoption, and people will avoid it. One of the reasons why I always tell people you have to be intentional with technology adoption is that if you overwhelm them in Teams or Slack or whatever, and there's 50 different channels and people don't know how to use it, and you've not agreed on best practices that you're going to do as a team, and everybody just does their own thing, people will absolutely avoid it and they will not participate, because they just can't even deal with it, and it's easier for them just to email someone. So understanding change management is a thing, and also kind of having that problem statement to go towards. Once you have all that in place, then I think then you can go forward and build those productivity plans, and kind of figure out how to improve. But you can't just sort of go, hey, I want to fix it, without knowing what you're trying to fix. So that's my best advice.
Yeah, and then also be mindful about, if you are trying to implement something, say going paperless, just be mindful of what the rest of the organization is doing as well. Because if they're trying to implement a new system, or a new HR system, or a new any kind of system, it's very easy to become overwhelmed, because so much change is going on. So just be mindful of when you implement things as well.
I love it. Okay, so another question was, any tips on calendar management for executive teams? We could, that's like a whole thing. Like we could do a whole week on that.
Don't let them do their own diary. Don't let them do it. Just let you do it. Nobody else do it. It's quite tricky, because sometimes you've got lots of people who are trying to schedule a meeting, and you've got emails bouncing back and forth, like, is 10 o'clock okay? Is 11 o'clock okay? You've got all these different questions, and then you've got people on the phone. You've got Sarah calling Joe, and Joe's calling Bob, and you've got all these people. Just, whoa, stop. If you want to have a meeting at 10 o'clock with Joe Blogs, send a calendar invite. What it's going to do, this is what I would say, is it then puts a tentative meeting in the diary, and anybody can see that if they look at the schedule view going free busy. That is probably the best thing that I can suggest you do. If you are working with a lot of other assistants, just try set a boundary in that way by communicating, look, can we just send all meeting invites, regardless of whether they actually suit the schedule or not? Let's play the Tetris game. Let's see if we can squeeze it in that way. But rather than sending emails back and forth, and please, executives, don't touch your diary. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I think for me, my advice is more process-based. If you and your team have never discussed like the 5 things that every meeting should have, if you as an EA, if you don't know the 5 major types of meetings, if you don't know like what those things are aligned to, then when somebody says to you, hey, I need this meeting, you don't know the right questions to ask. And the questions end up being more like, well, what time and who do you need to be there, versus the important things that are like, you know, what's the expected outcome? Is there a pre-read? Who has the decision rights? Like all of those things that you need to, that I think that we can do a better job as EAs as driving intentional meeting culture. So for me,
Yes.
it's having the conversation with the team that says, hey, listen, all of us are frustrated with meeting management. We want to do a better job of using everybody's time, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to start that if you want a meeting scheduled, I need to know these 5 things. I need to know the meeting type, if there's a pre-read, the expected outcome, you know, all of those things that you need. And then from there, then everyone is going towards that intentional meeting culture. But to me, it's just a conversation. And most people, we're the ones who own the tool that's driving everybody's lives crazy. And so we have to take control of it. So that's my biggest advice. It's not as tactical as it is strategic, is, you know, make the decision as a team that we're going to do better with intentional meeting management and then push it forward. So that's my advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question is, what do you find most useful when you manage multiple projects that you're working on? Collaborative tools, obviously, that's what I would say.
Yes. And just communicating, but then also just it all comes back to managing your time, blocking out time to really focus on whichever projects you're working on, and just constant communication. Reviews right through the project, because there's nothing like getting a project, getting the full spec, being ace, getting it all right, and then a priority changes or something right smack bang in the middle. You have to integrate something else which should have actually happened in the very beginning. So just constant communication. So I'm with you on collaborative tools. Just communicate.
Yeah, I would say, you know, for me, definitely use the collaborative tools, and then just making sure that you're setting the expectation of what does that look like, that, you know, this is where you go to find information. We're centralizing all the information here. This is not happening via email. So to me, again, it's really, I think most of our problems, this might get everybody mad at me, but I feel like a lot of our problems as EAs could be fixed with simple conversations. We just don't do a good enough job of going to our team and saying, hey guys, look, this is the expectation. If you want something, I'm driving this project and this is how it's gonna, you know, it's gonna work. Instead of trying to get everybody to tell us, we tell them. And you have to push it back on them and say, guys, like, this is where you're going to find in the information. This is like the expectation and the deadlines and all of that stuff driven by us versus someone else dictating to us the when, the how, and the why. And I think we can get in problems when we do that. So I say you have to be okay being the expert instead of, you know, not knowing your place and kind of trying to fight for your place. Just own your space and you project out, you know, hey, you've got this.
Yeah, and also know that sometimes you'll have to say the same thing very many times to the same person. Just also know who it is that you're dealing with. So have an awareness of that as well.
Okay, so Erin was asking, kind of as a follow-up, is then how do you handle that you have lots of meetings being scheduled by external people? So Erin, do you mean that other people are requesting time? Is that what you're saying? If I understand the question right, I might say, so earlier I had talked about batching days. And I think somebody asked the question, it's batching with a B, not M. They thought I said it matching. So batching days. So the concept with batching days is that you strategically look and you understand from your executive what their ideal week looks like. And so if my ideal week is, let's say, I'll give you what my ideal week looks like. So my ideal week is on Mondays is strategy and vision. And then Tuesdays, so I don't take client calls or one-on-ones or anything like that on Mondays generally. And this worked the same when I was supporting the COO. We did this exact same thing. So Mondays were strategy and vision, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays were one-on-ones and staff meeting. Wednesday were meetings that were either external within the org or up and across in the org. And then Friday we closed out their week. So when somebody said to me, hey, Melissa, I need to have a one-on-one with Pradeep, then, you know, if it was based I very quickly knew, was this actually a one-on-one? Was it like a skip level one-on-one, or was it based on a project, or what kind of a meeting was it actually? And then instead of just offering the soonest time available, I would offer a Tuesday or a Thursday if it was a one-on-one, or if it was Wednesday. So it really does. And then, not to say that you can't be inflexible or move things around, but it does help you align it in a different way in what you're willing to offer someone else, because you know that, you know, your executive is doing less contextual switching if they're focusing on one thing that day. Then you're also able to plan. For example, we kept all of our OneNote, because I don't know about you guys, but my executives would always get crazy frustrated during one-on-ones, because one-on-ones were not always as productive as they'd like them to be. And so they were very tactical. And my executive was like, look, at some point, you're only going to get 30 minutes with me. So if you want to use me to the best of your ability, don't ask me to sign this paperwork, or don't ask me to send this email. Like, talk to me about the business. So we implemented where we used OneNote for their direct reports, and they would, you know, kind of do all that tactical stuff, and we would manage it there. And so when they had their one-on-ones on Tuesday, on Monday, they spent time going through, you know, all of those actions and kind of going through what they wanted to talk about. So they were prepped and ready, kind of going back to that intentional meeting culture that you're trying to drive. So all of those things, I think, make a difference on how you're driving meeting management and how intentional your organization is. And something just as simple as, when do I offer free time? Is it just whenever it's free, or whenever we've decided, you know, is best practice based on their ideal week? So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left. So if you guys have any questions that you want us to ask in the last 5 minutes, hop over to the Q&A or in the chat and ask that question. So let's see. So let's ask this question. So someone had asked when they registered, how do you improve it? How do you improve productivity and not get bogged down by the workload?
You just power hour. Power hour. You just have to know what it is that you need to focus on. You need to know what your priorities are. You need to know what your executive's priorities are, goals, strategic vision. Once you have all of those things in check, the basics, I call them basics, in check, you're able to really know what it is that you need to focus on, what it is that you need to push up, or, you know, put to the bottom of the list. You just have to know what your priorities are, and realize, and also be sort of flexible, because things might come up and they might change, and just don't be too rigid about it, but just really communicate and know what the priorities are. And have a system for yourself. So if you know that you're great at putting things in OneNote, then stick to OneNote. Don't try flick flack through all these different things. Don't jot things down on a post-it note and then stick them on your computer. Try keep things as simple and tidy as possible. Keep it all in one place.
Yeah, I would say my best practice is don't let other people manage your workload. Like, you manage your own. Yeah. So you have to determine and be honest with yourself about how and when you're going to do things. So for me, it's really about, I think time blocking is absolutely will rock your world once you start doing it. And so I think, yeah, I mean, when it comes to EAs, a lot of times we allow other people to dictate the when, the how, and why we do things. And I don't mean our executives. I just mean like everyone else in the world. And so I you know, just determine what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, and then set those expectations out and let everybody else know when you're going to be able to manage it and how. You know, and then also don't put the pressure on yourself of saying, yes, I have to do with something because it's top of mind for someone else. It doesn't mean it should be top of mind for you. So I would say manage your workload by managing your own priorities. So
I see awesome. A lot of people are asking about the Power Hour template. And what I would, if that's okay, I would say I'll put a link in the LinkedIn invite, or possibly here, and book some time with me. It's half an hour, and I will share my template with you, and I'll show you what it looks like, if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys are connected with us in the productivity tip, we have a productivity tip event. So you can hop on over there and we'll put tips in there as well. We can share information out. You can follow us both on LinkedIn. Meg, go join her Connected Assistants group on LinkedIn, and you can join me on all the things, all the places. So thanks everyone. We appreciate your time and we'll talk soon. Bye y'all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, Leanne. Bye, Michelle. Kelly, Karen, Jackie. Bye, everyone.
Oh, wow. That's great. Bye. Oh, wonderful.
Yay. Okay, so it was just us now.
Oh, great.
Awesome. Okay, so let's say goodbye to everyone on YouTube. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate it.
Bye.